Welcome everybody to our second, I guess we'll call it our second session of the Coach's Corner. We're joined this afternoon, right at the afternoon hour, our lunch hour, with Jackie Kirby, our head cross-country coach and associate head coach of track and field. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Again, just kind of our programming note. We'll have Coach Kirby kind of give us a background on her and the program and season and kind of a little jumble, a mix of everything. And then the back half will kind of be a Q&A session to kind of allow everyone to ask questions on her, the program, institution, kind of wide open. So that's kind of the gist of how the Coach's Corner will work. So I will pause and let Coach Kirby, the floor is yours. And we'll let you take it away.
Okay. Well, background on me, I ran competitively for a Division III college in Pennsylvania called Keystone College. I was just recently inducted into their Athletics Hall of Fame in 2019. That was a really fun time. Got to visit with some old friends and old coaches that I met along the way. I started coaching at the University of Mount Olive. It was then named Mount Olive College in 2009. And I started off as a part-time assistant, and then I worked my way up through the ranks. And now I'm at where I'm at. I was honored to be given, the opportunity to take over the cross-country program after the former head coach left. And I think it's been a great experience so far. The team has developed pretty much from back in 2009. We were a very small squad, not a whole lot of success. And since then, we've increased our roster sizes to over 100, and we've won numerous championships. And we're really excited to keep that tradition going. Is there anything else you want me to say about that? I don't know.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So we'll kind of, the way this will work, just so everybody knows, you can use the group chat feature in there to ask Coach Kirby any questions that you have. So I'll kind of start us off here. What you touched on it a little bit, the transition into taking over the cross-country program. What's been the biggest transition into becoming a head coach? You obviously have been here for several years. What's been the biggest transition for you taking over that program?
Honestly, it really wasn't a big transition. I had a lot of responsibility prior to taking over. I'd say probably just the biggest thing that I had to get used to was now the pressure's on me to perform and be successful. It's officially my training that I'm implementing, and so when we're not successful, it hurts a little more. So I want us to be successful all the time. That's probably the biggest transition. I'm just so used to following someone else's lead that now that I have the reins, it's a lot of pressure. But really, that's the biggest thing.
So obviously you have the reins of the program. What has been I guess we'll kind of dive a little bit into the training of it a little bit. What's the toughest course that you've taken the team for a run on, and what's that like when you take them to a tougher environment?
So the toughest course, I don't know if I'm the best judge to ask, actually, because I don't actually run the courses, but just from, I guess, an outsider's perspective, the toughest course would probably, I'd say, be actually where our regional championship is going to be this coming year in North Georgia. It's very technical. It's not easy. There's a lot of hills. And yeah, we just got a lot of feedback from the team that was a pretty challenging race. And of course, it being the regional championship, it probably adds a little bit of challenge to the course, a little bit more pressure, but yeah, coming from, you know, where we are, where it's pretty much 100% flat. We don't really have a lot of hills in this area. We take the team to trails that have hills, you know, that are away from campus, so we can at least get that training and, you know, get that experience. If you ask the team, you know, what our Sundays are like, they'd probably say they're pretty tough because we go to some pretty big parks with pretty big hills, and it's really great, you know, to build that kind of fitness and get ready for those races like North Georgia.
Okay. All right. So our next question comes from actually head women's volleyball coach Emma Salentano. What was the first step, you know, or the biggest change that you implemented to make the program successful?
Well, so I was in a kind of a unique situation, I guess. I just had some really big shoes to fill, actually, because the previous coach was extremely successful, you know, and and I watched him build a, you know, a program basically around nothing. And so trying to fill those shoes, I think I'm still trying to do that. But so I guess the biggest change, I don't know if it's a change or if it's just an addition to what we do. I try to be extremely transparent with my thought process, because I inherited a team that did it a certain way for a very long time. And if I changed something or if I did something that was slightly different, I really wanted to make sure everyone understood why I was doing things differently, or why, you know, I was taking this approach. And I made sure I gave, you know, our team some binders at the beginning of the year with rules and, you know, resources and all that kind of stuff of what we were going to cover throughout the season. So I'd say it was maybe not necessarily a change, but just an addition to what we have been doing to try to continue our success.
So kind of to build off of that, what has been the key, and this kind of combines, you know, both cross country and the track and field teams as well. To you, what has been the key to continuing that success that they have had for what almost seems like a decade?
Mm-hmm. So I'd say, well, the biggest factor, I'd say, in what has made us successful is our culture. And so I try to do our best to cultivate and continue to, you know, nurture that culture that we've developed. The team gets very involved in who we recruit, and it's been, you know, with COVID and everything going on, it's looked a little different this year for sure, especially because we couldn't get, you know, kids to visit like we usually do, or at least see them face to face like we usually do. But yeah, trying to, you know, get that message across that, you know, we do things a certain way. You come to Mount Olive, and just because of our location and, you know, where and how we operate, you come to Mount Olive to be a student and an athlete. You come to Mount Olive to get better at your sport and to become a better student. And if your priorities don't fall within those, you know, parameters, then maybe this isn't the best place for you. And we tend to weed out the people that, you know, want to do other things while they're in college.
Okay. Our next question comes from Jeff Eisen. What are your expectations for the team for this season?
Well, we have a very young squad this year. We did have a really big senior class come through, and it was, you know, a very experienced class. And so our squad's going to be pretty young, pretty green, if you know. Yeah, I'm actually taking this situation that we're in with the coronavirus and, you know, how we have to adjust our schedules a bit, is actually going to be quite a bit of a blessing to us, because especially for men, you know, having to cover a much longer distance in college compared to high school. Some high schools only run 2 miles in cross country. Some high schools run 5K. The men have to increase to 8K and 10K in college. And so this time, these large training blocks to get in solid training without being interrupted with a race per se is going to be really helpful for the athletes that need to make that transition. And, with women, a lot of times you see with the programs in high school, they don't run as much as they're going to run in college. And so this is just going to give everybody the chance to adapt and develop uninterrupted. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm excited to see what everybody does. And I'm excited to see how we progress and develop throughout the season.
Okay. Again, appreciate all the questions coming in. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions for Coach Kirby, to put them into the group chat, and we'll get to them as we kind of go through this. One thing that, kind of comes up, and you touched on it a little bit with the, coronavirus and everything, how difficult is it to, stay in contact with so many athletes that you have, both, again, on the cross country and the track and field side with, sometimes, again, the cross country team is a little bit smaller, still large in itself. To stay in contact with these athletes throughout the season, and then the summer with how, this coronavirus has affected you guys, and what strategies do you use to stay in contact with them?
So for cross country, I'd say over the summer and, for the, latter half of the spring semester, it's a little easier for me because we have a much quicker, a faster approaching goal than the track team itself does, because we have to be prepared and in shape for the fall. And so I pretty much hear from everybody at least once a week because they want to tell me how their training's going, and they give me updates on how they're feeling and how they're progressing. And so it's a little easier for me to stay in touch with the distance runners because, I need to know how they're doing with training. When I send them out training, they're going to hear from me at least, once a week, if not more, because I'm trying to get them to do their sportswear. So they, they're going to hear from me a lot, and I get a lot of feedback from them as well. So that's how I stay in touch. Of course, the track team, Earl Graves has done a really great job at creating these gigantic team Zoom meetings with everybody, new people included, to see everybody, to meet everybody and see everybody's faces. And I think that keeps that connection alive. It keeps everybody a little bit more motivated and ready to, take on the next year despite, the season being cut short.
You touched on a lot of, you mentioned a couple of times the training and keeping in touch with them is one of the biggest ways to do that. Question we had just pop in, what type of training or workout requirements do you have for those student athletes over the summer? Because obviously you have international athletes and athletes that are basically global, all over the place, different states, different regions. So what do the workout routines look like for these student athletes?
So the way we set up our training during the week, we try to fit into that time slot where we won't be conflicting with class schedules. And so we practice at 3:30 in the afternoon, pretty much all year. There's only a couple of days a week where we'll practice a little earlier, like on Fridays and on Sundays, we'll practice earlier. But for training, we run a lot. We do a lot of volume. We do. And that's something that we try to get our kids to buy into pretty early, is that running more is the thing that ultimately makes you run faster as a distance runner. The more you run, the more capillaries you develop, and that's, more oxygenated blood that's being transported to your muscles, and then you're, getting faster, which is great. And the faster they can buy into that, the faster I think that we are successful. And so, I've had a couple of meetings so far about that sort of thing. And we've had some alumni come back and, share their experience with, the training and the different type of things that we're going to be doing that, they may not have done in high school. A lot of the time it looks very, very different. And so that's the biggest thing, is trying to get them to buy in to that training. It's going to seem crazy at first, but then once you start seeing those results, it's like, oh, that light bulb goes off. This does work. Okay, I got it. And that's, that's the biggest thing. Maybe if you could give me a specific question about training, I could instead of just rambling about it, I can describe.
Yeah, sure. We actually had one just come in actually from Bruce Banner. So what are some of the things that you do for the mental side of the training to kind of help? You talked about buying in. Obviously, when you're running these distance races, you have a lot of them is keeping them mentally checked in and running sometimes as a pack. Sometimes you're out individually if you get out to a strong start. And then sometimes it's the late runs. So how do you get them some of those mental training skills? What does that look like for them?
So what we do with training for workouts, especially, we do a lot of tempo work, lactate threshold work. So basically what that is you are kind of on that line of, like on that red line of where you feel like you're going all out, or like you feel like you can't go any faster, and you're right above, maybe just that steady run where you can feel like you can go forever kind of thing. So we're constantly bumping on that threshold, and we're kind of callousing the body in that way. And we do some really long, lactate threshold runs to get our bodies used to being locked in to certain paces for a longer period of time, and for getting used to being in that pain threshold for a longer period of time. We always, do more than, or I shouldn't say always, but probably 85% of the time we do more. In our workouts, we are doing more than what our race distance is to get us used to being in that pain threshold, for a long time. The race, sometimes it feels like it's taking forever. And when you train at that tempo threshold, that's honestly our bread and butter. That's how you build fitness. That's how you get fast. You don't necessarily need speed work all the time. I hear a lot of kids like, "Oh, coach, I didn't feel fast. I needed, to do sprints. I need to do, some speed work." And it's like, nah, actually, man, you need to run more. that's how you get fast. Speed work there's a time and place for speed work, and that's typically saved for much later in the season. Speed makes you really sharp, and then it makes you plateau, and we don't want to plateau. We want everybody to keep increasing and getting better, and so we save the fast stuff, short fast stuff, towards the end of the season.
I'll kind of transition into the season a little bit. A question coming in from Eli: what do you predict? Again, the seasons have all been affected by the coronavirus and the NCAA putting restrictions on seasons and number of contests and things like that. So his question is, what is the season looking like? Number of races for cross country. Obviously, you guys run a limited schedule to begin with before postseason. What do you predict that the schedule will look like for this year?
Well, so far from what we have put in place, I haven't heard of anything really changing from that standpoint. It will be a little less intense, I guess. So typically in a normal year, we're racing maybe every other weekend throughout the fall. So now we're going to be starting a little later, which is great, like I said earlier, for the young team to transition into the longer race distance and the collegiate training format. And we'll be competing probably, at 4 times, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but, and it will be a much later start than what we usually do. But, I really think that's going to be great for the team, for the squad that we have coming in, because we will need that time to develop and get used to the training. Does that answer your question?
I believe it does. And this kind of goes off the same lines as that question. Something that's unique for the University of Mount Olive is being able to actually host the conference championship. This is the question that was asked as well. What kind of advantage does that give to you guys? Obviously, call it a little bit of home cooking in that sense. It's your home course. You talked about it being a little bit of a flatter course. What advantage does that give you guys having that ability to say, hey, we're going for the conference championship at home again this year, having it, again, being in Mount Olive?
Well, they train on that course, every week. So they're going to be well versed, obviously, and that's a great advantage, home coast advantage. That's a real thing. They know all the nooks and crannies. They know where the tough spots are. They know where the slick spots are. They know everything about the course. But I'd say one of the biggest advantages is that we're going to get that support, from the university. Our entire track team comes out, they help out, they volunteer, and that's huge. You get other sports, other staff, they come out to watch a championship. It really gives that championship atmosphere, I'd say, and it makes it really exciting, to compete, on our campus. And I've been doing this for a while, and I'd say, I'll toot our own horn. When we host, it's been a great experience. It's probably the best experience that we've witnessed for championship culture and atmosphere when it's been held on our campus. We do a really great job, and I think that really helps across the board, all teams. Makes it feel like a championship atmosphere. Makes it feel like it's a really big, important race, and I think we're pretty successful due to that.
So I'm going to put you on the spot because there was a question that came in from another one of your coaches. What is your favorite thing about coaching at UML?
Oh, you. All of you. That is my favorite thing about coaching at UMO. Honestly, I really enjoy the people. I get a lot of support. I get a lot of, great mentors and great, experiences working here, and have been given a lot of opportunity. And yeah, number one is always the people. That's the greatest thing about coaching at UMO.
Good response. It's a good thing to have, I think.
Yeah.
People's a huge part of it. And it goes into, recruiting as well when you can help, build that into it. Let's talk about recruiting for just a second.
Sure.
You recruit athletes from all over the globe. We talked about, that being part of the training schedule. What makes a UMO athlete stand out to you when you guys are recruiting?
Well, we try to look for a very well-rounded athlete. So academically, they're strong, and athletically, they show some promise, or they show, some talent. We have been known to take recruits that maybe aren't, the best that they can be in their area, and we take them and we develop them into something that's pretty spectacular. That's been something that we do very frequently, and as long as they buy in, we got to buy in. Oh, yeah. But yeah, we look for kids that, show a lot of promise, that show they've got some talent. Maybe they're not great at every single event that they've done in high school, but they show some promise in maybe one or two events. And we're like, you know what, maybe I can work with that student athlete if they're willing to buy into our program. And when they do, they are very successful. And that's what we look for, honestly. Well-rounded, they show promise, they're a great student, because then we know that they're going to be a great fit, and we can give them a great package.
All right, be prepared for this. When we say we open it up for all sorts of questions, you never know what you're going to get. So be prepared for this one. It's a two-part question. Is a hot dog considered a sandwich or not?
Okay.
Okay. And then mustard or ketchup and relish or not?
So okay. So, I actually never gave that any thought about a hot dog being considered a sandwich or not. I guess technically, if you want to be technical, it could be considered a sandwich because it's like a really tiny Subway, bun with some meat in the middle. Yeah, that could be classified as a sandwich.
It's got technically two things of bread, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. So, it's could be technically considered a sandwich. Have I considered a sandwich in my lifetime? No, it's a hot dog. but to answer the other questions, both mustard and ketchup and relish. Yeah, but I also add sauerkraut. I don't know, maybe because I'm a New Yorker. I don't know, but I add sauerkraut also.
You had to insert the New Yorker part in there, didn't you?
Yeah.
All right, well, there we go. So, again, whenever we do these, you never know what kind of questions we're going to get. So that was fantastic. Again, appreciate everyone's questions with that. That was great. Again, kind of going into again, bouncing back into the recruiting a little, we had to pause for that because that was fantastic. Um, what advice would you have for any future students, again, athletes looking to compete at Division II level? To you again, you've been an athlete, you've been a coach. What does it take in your mind to compete at the next level?
I'd say first and foremost is do your research. There's a lot of programs out there that'll just kind of buy their athletes, on the level where you can give scholarships of D2 and D1, they'll buy their athletes and they'll notice that they won't have a whole lot of progression or success throughout their collegiate career. So I would say do your research on the programs that have showed a lot of progression and a lot of, success in that avenue. I feel there's a lot of times where recruits will just go to where the money is, where it's the place that's giving them the most money. And what's going to happen when you don't run, when you can't run anymore, or if you get injured, you get a season-ending injury and you can't compete. You'll probably 9 times out of 10 be really miserable with where you're at because you were just taking the money kind of thing. So I'd say just do your research, make sure that you are completely satisfied with where you'll be attending school. Don't just, chase a scholarship, chase a program or chase some success, chase, develop, the will to want to develop and become a better athlete. And try to find out as much information as you can about those programs and about those schools. It's my biggest advice. I'd say is just do the research, do your homework.
Okay. Kind of wrapping up here, we'll take one final question here from Courtney. Do you have a favorite coaching memory at UMO, which I know is going to be kind of hard? There's been a lot of success under your coaching tutelage here. Do you have a favorite coaching memory?
I'll kind of break this up into 2 parts, I guess. My favorite coaching memory prior to being a head coach was making a national championship with the team and with individuals, for the first time. I'd say being able to take the team, coming from personally where I've competed on the national level when I was in college, that experience just trumps, every other experience that you'll have as an athlete. The atmosphere is completely different. It's just so much fun, and it's such a great time, and it's a great thing to be a part of, to stand on a line with, hundreds of other athletes that are just as good or better than you are. And it's humbling, but it's a great experience, for sure. And so my favorite, memory as a coach would definitely be the first time we were able to take individuals and an entire team to the national championship. As a head coach, my favorite memory, it's a short list, but it's definitely, being so successful and taking, 15th in the nation with the men's team is great. But I'd say, over this season, we made a lot of great memories, and I feel like I don't want to, diminish any success that anybody else had throughout the season. I really enjoyed developing the relationships that I developed with the athletes that I did this fall. That was a really great time. They were very welcoming, which is great. And they, really took to what I said, and they took it to heart, and they, kept plugging along with what we preach and what we have preached with our training. And they did a really great job.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Coach Kirby, thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you everyone for your questions. Again, I'm sure if there's any more questions, you can shoot them right to you. And again, we wish you and the teams, both cross country and track and field, the best of luck this season. And again, crazy time we are living in, but we'll wish you guys the best of luck this season. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was great. We'll see you guys.